Picture this. You're 8 months pregnant, sitting at your own dinner table, watching your billionaire husband introduce his 26-year-old mistress to his mother. He wants you to be welcoming. She's discussing renovating your bedroom. And his mother. She's about to deliver the most savage revenge in family history. This isn't just about cheating. This is about a tech mogul who thought he owned everything, including the women in his life. He was dead wrong. What happened next destroyed a $2.8 billion empire and created a new dynasty led by the woman he tried to discard. If you love stories where justice is served ice cold, smash that like button, drop a comment with your reaction, and subscribe, because this tale of ultimate karma will leave you speechless. Let's dive in. The security footage would later show everything. Madison Wells strutting up the marble steps of the Richmond mansion in her crimson designer dress, while 8 months pregnant Sarah Mitchell watched from the bedroom window above, one hand pressed against the glass, the other cradling her swollen belly. This is the night everything changed. But to understand how Sarah went from tech executive to discarded wife to ultimate victor, we need to go back 3 months. The Richmond mansion perched on Malibu's most exclusive cliff, a testament to new money meeting old power. Glass walls offered panoramic views of the Pacific, while the interior screamed Silicon Valley success. David Richmond had built his artificial intelligence empire from a Stanford dorm room, and at 35, the company's recent $2.8 billion public offering had made him one of America's youngest tech billionaires. Sarah had been his chief marketing officer when they met. Brilliant, driven, and undeniably beautiful, she had transformed Richmond Tech's public image from nerdy startup to lifestyle brand. Their wedding 3 years ago graced the covers of Fortune and Vogue simultaneously. But fairy tales have expiration dates. The pregnancy had been planned, celebrated with champagne toasts and nursery designs. David had seemed thrilled during those first magical weeks, his hands constantly finding her still flat stomach, whispering about their future family dynasty. Then something shifted. It started subtly. Phone calls taken in other rooms. Weekend trips to quote-unquote urgent investor meetings. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off her now treated her like fragile cargo, more obligation than desire. Sarah first suspected something was wrong when she found the Tiffany receipt, $2,000 for a tennis bracelet she had never received. When she asked David about it, he claimed it was for his assistant's birthday. His assistant was a 57-year-old man named Robert. The Instagram discovery came by accident. Sarah was researching influencer partnerships for a campaign when she stumbled across Madison Wells's profile. 26 years old, blonde, and devastatingly beautiful. Madison documented her luxury lifestyle for 300,000 followers. Her mess bags, private jets, 5-star restaurants, and in the background of several recent posts, Sarah recognized a familiar figure, David's distinctive profile, his custom Patek Philippe watch, even his lucky Stanford class ring. The photos were carefully cropped, but Sarah knew. A woman doesn't spend 7 years with a man without memorizing every detail of his appearance. That night, she confronted him in their bedroom, overlooking the twinkling lights of the coast. "Who is Madison Wells?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. David barely looked up from his laptop. "Never heard of her." "Why, she's been posting photos from your business trips." "Sarah, you're being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones can make women imagine things." The dismissal stung worse than any slap. "Pregnancy hormones? David, I'm not crazy. I saw the photos." "You saw coincidences. Los Angeles is a small town for people in our circles." He finally closed the laptop, his expression shifting to concerned husband mode. "Honey, I need you to focus on staying healthy for our baby. This stress isn't good for either of you." The gaslighting was masterful. By the end of the conversation, Sarah found herself apologizing for bringing it up, but the doubts had taken root. 2 weeks later, Sarah made a discovery that shattered any remaining illusions. She had been looking for their insurance documents in David's home office when she found the hotel receipts. Not just one or two, but dozens, spanning the past 4 months. The Four Seasons, Chicago. The Ritz-Carlton, San Francisco. The St. Regis, New York. All charged to David's personal American Express. Each receipt showed the same pattern luxury suites, room service for 2, late checkout times. Sarah's hands trembled as she photographed each receipt with her phone. The dates matched perfectly with David's claimed business trips. But the charges told a different story. Champagne, spa services, multiple dinners. This wasn't business. This was romance. The financial reality hit her like a physical blow. During their marriage, Sarah had gradually transferred her assets into joint accounts that David managed. Her own career had been sacrificed bit by bit as she took on more responsibilities as Richmond Tech's first lady. Charity galas, investor dinners, the endless social obligations that came with being married to a billionaire. Now, at 8 months pregnant with no independent income, she was completely dependent on a man who was systematically replacing her. Her sister Ashley flew down from San Francisco that weekend. A successful divorce attorney, Ashley took one look at the evidence and went into full legal mode. "Sarah, this is textbook. He's been planning this for months. Look at the pattern. He's isolating you financially, emotionally, and socially." They sat in the mansion's pristine kitchen, documents spread across the marble island. Outside, the Pacific waves crashed against the cliffs with relentless force. "What are my options?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Legally, you're in a strong position. California is a community property state. You're entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage. The problem is liquid assets. He can freeze accounts, claim business emergencies." "And the baby?" Ashley's expression darkened. "That's where it gets complicated. If he claims you're unstable, if he manufactures a mental health crisis, he could fight for primary custody." The words hung between them like a death sentence. Sarah had given up everything for this marriage, this family. Now she was trapped. That evening, David returned from another quote-unquote investor meeting, whistling as he walked through the front door. He found Sarah in the living room, staring out at the darkening ocean. "How was your day, honey?" His tone was cheerful, almost mocking. "Ashley came to visit." "Oh, how is she?" David moved to the bar, pouring himself a scotch. He didn't offer Sarah anything. "She's concerned about us, about our marriage." David's hand paused for just a moment before continuing to pour. "Ashley never liked me. I wouldn't put too much stock in her opinions. She thinks you're having an affair." This time David did stop. He turned to face Sarah, his expression shifting from casual dismissal to something harder. "And what do you think, Sarah?" The question was a trap, and they both knew it. If she accused him, she was the paranoid pregnant wife. If she backed down, she was admitting defeat. "I think my husband has been lying to me." David walked over and sat beside her on the couch, his movements deliberate and controlled. He placed his hand on her belly, and for a moment, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. "Sarah, I love you. I love our baby. But I need you to trust me. These next few months are crucial for the company. The IPO was just the beginning. I'm building something that will secure our family's future for generations." His words were honey over poison. Sarah wanted desperately to believe him, to return to the fantasy of their perfect life. Then why does it feel like you're pulling away from me? I'm not pulling away. I'm protecting what we've built. Sometimes that means making difficult choices, keeping certain business relationships separate from our personal life. Business relationships. The euphemism was breathtaking in its audacity. David, I need to know. Are you seeing someone else? He looked directly into her eyes, his expression earnest and sincere. Sarah Michelle Richmond, you are the love of my life and the mother of my child. I would never do anything to jeopardize our family. It was a masterful non-answer, technically truthful while completely misleading. And in that moment, Sarah realized her husband wasn't just unfaithful. He was a skilled manipulator who had been playing her for months. The worst part, she still loved him. Jake Torres had been David's best friend since their Stanford days and his business partner for the past 8 years. He had watched David's transformation from idealistic entrepreneur to ruthless executive with growing unease. The affair with Madison Wells had been impossible to miss. David flaunted it during business trips, bringing her to investor meetings and introducing her as a quote-unquote social media consultant. Jake had watched his friend's marriage deteriorate while David seemed oblivious to the destruction he was causing. The breaking point came during a business dinner in San Francisco. David had brought Madison, of course, while Sarah remained in Malibu, too pregnant to travel. Jake watched Madison post Instagram stories from their table at the exclusive restaurant, tagging the location and making sure her 300,000 followers knew exactly where she was. "Doesn't this bother you?" Jake asked during a brief moment when Madison had excused herself. "What?" David seemed genuinely confused. "Your wife is 8 months pregnant and you're parading your mistress around San Francisco." David's expression hardened. "My personal life is my business. Jake, Sarah understands the demands of my position." "No, she doesn't. She has no idea what you're doing." "Sarah is focused on the baby, as she should be. I'm focused on building our empire." The casual dismissal of his pregnant wife was staggering. Jake realized his friend had become someone he barely recognized. That night, Jake made a decision that would change everything. He started documenting David's behavior, photos, videos, recordings of conversations. He told himself it was insurance, protection for the company if David's personal life became a public scandal. But deep down, he was gathering evidence for Sarah. The next morning, Jake called Sarah from his hotel room. "Sarah, it's Jake. We need to talk." Her voice was tired, defeated. "If this is about David, I don't think I want to know. You deserve better than this. You deserve the truth." They met at a coffee shop in Manhattan Beach, far from Malibu's prying eyes. Jake brought a manila envelope filled with photos and documents. "This has been going on for 6 months, he said, sliding the envelope across the table. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have told you sooner." Sarah's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Photo after photo of David and Madison together. Hotel lobbies, restaurants, private jets. In several pictures, Madison was clearly wearing expensive jewelry that Sarah had never seen. "There's more," Jake said quietly. "He's been using company resources to support her lifestyle. The private jet, the hotels, even her rent. It's technically embezzlement." Sarah stared at a photo of David kissing Madison on a yacht. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 weeks ago, the same day Sarah had her baby shower. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you're my friend too. And because what he's doing isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. He's using shareholder money to fund his affair." The implications were staggering. Not only was David betraying her personally, but he was risking everything they had built professionally. "What should I do?" Jake leaned forward, his expression serious. Document everything. Get a lawyer. And whatever you do, don't let him know you have this information until you're ready to use it. That afternoon, Sarah sat in her car outside the coffee shop, staring at the evidence of her husband's betrayal. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. The casual lie, delivered with a heart emoji, was almost funny in its audacity. Sarah made 2 phone calls. The first was to Ashley, asking her to come back to Los Angeles immediately. The second was to Elena Richmond, David's mother. Elena had never been warm toward Sarah, viewing her as an outsider who had somehow infiltrated their family dynasty. But she was also a former federal judge with strong opinions about honor and integrity. Elena, I need to speak with you about David. It's urgent. The older woman's voice was crisp, businesslike. What about David? I believe he's having an affair. I have evidence. A long pause. I see. We should discuss this in person. They arranged to meet the following day at Elena's Pasadena estate. As Sarah hung up, she wondered if she was making a mistake. Elena might side with her son, might use the information against Sarah in a custody battle. But Sarah was out of options. She needed allies. And Elena Richmond, despite her coldness, was a woman who valued family honor above all else. The war for Sarah's future was about to begin. Elena Richmond's Pasadena estate was old money California, built in 1920 with Spanish colonial architecture and perfectly manicured gardens. Unlike David's flashy Malibu mansion, this house whispered power rather than shouting it. Sarah arrived at exactly 2 o'clock, as requested. Elena met her in the library, a room lined with leather-bound law books and family portraits spanning 4 generations of Richmond men. Sit down, Sarah. Elena's voice carried the authority of 30 years on the federal bench. Show me what you have. Sarah placed Jake's envelope on the mahogany desk between them. Elena examined each photo methodically, her expression revealing nothing. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair. How long have you known? Suspected for months. Confirmed last week. And what do you want from me? The question was direct, typical of Elena's no-nonsense approach. Sarah had prepared for this moment, but sitting across from David's formidable mother, she felt like a defendant awaiting sentencing. I want to save my marriage. I want David to end this affair and commit to our family. Elena's smile was thin, almost pitying. My dear, that ship sailed months ago. The question now is what you intend to do about it. I don't understand. David is weak, just like his father was. Richard had affairs too, though he was more discreet about it. I learned to manage his indiscretions for the sake of the family name. The revelation was staggering. Elena was admitting that infidelity was a Richmond family tradition. Are you suggesting I should just accept this? I'm suggesting you need to decide what kind of woman you are. Are you a victim, or are you a survivor? Elena stood and walked to the window overlooking her rose garden. David believes he holds all the power in your marriage because he controls the money. What he doesn't understand is that real power in this family has always rested elsewhere. What do you mean? Elena turned back to Sarah, her expression calculating. The Richmond family wealth isn't just David's tech company. We have real estate holdings, investment portfolios, and trust funds that predate his birth by decades. David likes to think he's a self-made billionaire, but he's built his empire on the foundation I provided. The implications were starting to dawn on Sarah. You're saying you still control the family assets. I'm saying that David's recent behavior has forced me to reevaluate certain arrangements. A man who embezzles company funds to support his mistress is not someone I trust with the family legacy. Elena returned to her desk and opened a drawer, removing a thick legal document. I had my attorneys prepare this last month, after reports of David's behavior reached me through other channels. It's a comprehensive review of all family holdings and David's access to them. Sarah stared at the document, afraid to hope. What does it say? It says that David's inheritance and access to family trusts are contingent on maintaining certain standards of behavior, standards he is currently failing to meet. The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique grandfather clock. Sarah felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to make a leap that would change everything. What do you need from me? Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. I need you to be strong. I need you to stand up to him when the time comes. And I need you to trust me, even when it seems like I'm not on your side. Why would you help me? You've never liked me. You're right. I thought you were weak, unsuited for this family. I was wrong. A weak woman would have ignored the evidence, accepted the humiliation, and played the role of grateful victim. You're here, fighting for your child's future. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Elena walked around the desk and placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. My granddaughter deserves better than a father who thinks women are disposable. If David won't be the man this family needs, then perhaps it's time for new leadership. As Sarah drove home to Malibu, her mind raced with possibilities. Elena's support changed everything, but it also raised the stakes. This wasn't just about her marriage anymore. This was about the future of the Richmond family dynasty. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. Home late again tonight. Big investor meeting. Sarah smiled grimly. Let him think he was winning. Soon, David Richmond would learn that betraying his family came with a price he never imagined. The real game was just beginning. David made the announcement on a Tuesday morning over breakfast, as casually as if he were discussing the weather. I'm having someone over for dinner Sunday night. I want you to meet her. Sarah nearly choked on her orange juice. They were sitting in their glass-walled breakfast nook, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly beyond the windows. At 8.5 months pregnant, Sarah moved slowly, deliberately, her belly making simple tasks challenging. Someone, she managed to ask. Her name is Madison Wells. She's been consulting on some social media strategy for the company. Very talented, very insightful about modern marketing approaches. The audacity was breathtaking. David was describing his mistress as a business consultant while asking his pregnant wife to play hostess. Sunday dinner. That's usually just family. I know, but Madison has become very important to our business strategy. I think it's time she met the family properly. Sarah set down her glass carefully, her hands trembling with rage and disbelief. By family, you mean me and your mother. Exactly. Mother always joins us for Sunday dinner. It will be perfect. Perfect. The word hung in the air like a curse. David wanted to parade his mistress in front of his pregnant wife and his mother, using their family tradition as a stage for his betrayal. David, I don't think this is appropriate. His expression shifted, the mask of considerate husband slipping to reveal something colder underneath. Sarah, this isn't a request. Madison is coming to dinner. I expect you to be welcoming and gracious. Can you handle that? The threat was implicit but clear. Be a good wife, play your role, or face the consequences. What if I refuse? David leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same expression he used when evaluating a business acquisition. Then you'll be making a very poor choice for someone in your position. The words hit like a physical blow. Your position, not our position, not the family's position, her position, as if she were an employee who could be fired rather than his wife and the mother of his child. I need time to think about this. There's nothing to think about. Madison is coming Sunday. End of discussion. David stood, kissed the top of Sarah's head with performative affection, and walked away, leaving her alone with the wreckage of their marriage scattered across the breakfast table. That afternoon, Sarah called Elena. He's bringing her here, to our home, for Sunday dinner. Elena's silence stretched for so long that Sarah wondered if the call had dropped. Elena, are you there? I'm here, and I'm not surprised. This is exactly what I expected him to do. What do you mean? David is testing boundaries, seeing how far he can push before anyone pushes back. He's counting on you to be too shocked, too pregnant, too dependent to fight back. Maybe I should just leave, pack a bag, and go stay with Ashley until the baby comes. No. Elena's voice was sharp. That's exactly what he wants. If you run, you're abandoning your territory. You're admitting defeat before the real battle begins. Then what should I do? You should attend dinner. You should be the perfect hostess, and you should let David hang himself with his own rope. Elena's plan was simple, but terrifying. Let David orchestrate his own downfall. Let him believe he was winning, while she documented every moment of his cruelty. Elena, I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. Sarah, in 3 months, you'll be responsible for my granddaughter's future. David has shown you exactly who he is. The question is, who are you going to be? The next few days passed in a haze of preparation and dread. David acted like a man planning a celebration, discussing wine pairings with their housekeeper and arranging for flowers to be delivered. He was orchestrating Sarah's humiliation with the same attention to detail he brought to business presentations. Saturday night. Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed next to David, listening to his peaceful breathing, wondering how she had married a stranger. When had the man she loved become someone capable of such calculated cruelty? Her phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Are you sure about this? It's not too late to change your mind. Sarah typed back, I'm staying. Some battles have to be fought. Sunday morning dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect California day that belonged in postcards. Sarah spent the morning getting ready, choosing her outfit carefully, a flowing navy dress that accommodated her pregnancy while maintaining her dignity, simple jewelry, understated makeup. She wanted to look like what she was, the lady of the house. At 6:30, the doorbell rang. Sarah heard David's footsteps in the hallway, his voice bright with anticipation. Madison, you look absolutely stunning. From her position on the living room couch, Sarah could see them in the foyer. Madison Wells was even more beautiful in person than in her Instagram photos. Tall, blonde, perfect in the way that only came from excellent genetics and expensive maintenance. She wore a red dress that was clearly designer, probably costing more than most people's monthly salary. David, darling, this house is incredible. Madison's voice carried clearly through the open space. The views are just breathtaking. Wait until you see the sunset from the dining room. It's magical. They were speaking as if Sarah didn't exist, as if this were Madison's first visit to what would soon be her new home. Sarah placed her hands on her belly, feeling her daughter's strong kicks. Whatever happened tonight, she would fight for this child's future. She would not let David destroy their family without a battle. The war had officially begun. Elena arrived at exactly 7 o'clock, as she had every Sunday for the past 3 years. But tonight, her usual composed demeanor carried an undercurrent of steel that made Sarah's breath catch. Sarah, dear. Elena's kiss on the cheek was warmer than usual. You look lovely. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss it. Elena's eyes glittered with something that might have been anticipation. David appeared in the living room with Madison attached to his arm like an expensive accessory. The introductions were surreal in their casual cruelty. "Mother, I'd like you to meet Madison Wells." "Madison, this is my mother, Elena Richmond." Madison extended a perfectly manicured hand, her smile dazzling. "Mrs. Richmond, it's such an honor to meet you. David speaks about you constantly." Elena shook the offered hand briefly, her expression unreadable. "Miss Wells, welcome to our home." The emphasis on "our" was subtle but unmistakable. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. "And of course," David continued, "you know my wife, Sarah." Madison turned to Sarah with a smile that was pure venom wrapped in sugar. "Sarah, finally, we meet properly. David has told me so much about you." Sarah remained seated, her hands folded over her belly. "I wish I could say the same." The barb hit its mark. Madison's smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to get to know each other." The implied future together was staggering in its boldness. Madison wasn't just David's mistress. She was his intended replacement wife, already comfortable in Sarah's home and confident in her eventual victory. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. The table was set with their finest china, as if this were a celebration rather than an execution. David seated Madison in Sarah's usual chair at his right hand, relegating Sarah to the far end of the table like a distant relative rather than the lady of the house. Elena sat across from Madison, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The first course passed in stilted conversation about the weather and local events. Madison dominated the discussion, her voice bright and animated as she described her latest Instagram collaborations and brand partnerships. "I'm actually working on a lifestyle book," Madison announced, twirling her wine glass. "A guide to living beautifully on any budget. Though I have to admit, my definition of budget might be a little skewed." She laughed, a sound like crystal bells. "How interesting," Elena said dryly. "And what qualifies you to give lifestyle advice?" Madison's smile tightened slightly. "Well, I've built a substantial following by sharing my authentic experiences. People trust my recommendations." "Authentic," Elena repeated, as if tasting the word. "How refreshing." Sarah recognized the tone. Elena was circling her prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. During the main course, Madison made her move. "David, you really should consider updating some of the decor in here. The house has such incredible bones, but it feels a little dated." Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. Madison was discussing renovating Sarah's home while Sarah sat 10 feet away. "I think Madison has excellent taste," David said, his eyes shining with infatuation. "She has such a fresh perspective on design." "Fresh," Sarah said quietly. "That's one word for it." Madison turned to her with false concern. "Sarah, I hope you don't mind me making suggestions. I just see so much potential here. This could be one of the most beautiful homes in Malibu with the right updates." The audacity was breathtaking. Madison was planning her future in Sarah's present, discussing changes to a home she didn't own while the actual owner sat silently pregnant and powerless. "Actually," Madison continued, warming to her theme, "I was thinking the master suite could use a complete renovation, something more modern, more sophisticated." That was the final straw. Sarah started to push back from the table, her composure finally cracking, but Elena's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Miss Wells, before you start planning renovations, perhaps you should understand exactly whose home you're in." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. David frowned, sensing danger but not understanding its source. "Mother, what do you mean?" Elena set down her wine glass with deliberate precision. I mean, David, that your assumptions about property ownership might be somewhat inaccurate. Sarah felt her heart stop. Elena was going off script, abandoning their plan to document David's behavior in favor of immediate action. I don't understand, David said, his voice tight with the first hints of concern. Elena reached into her purse and withdrew a manila envelope. Perhaps this will clarify things. She slid the envelope across the table, not to David, but to Sarah. Open it, dear. With trembling hands, Sarah opened the envelope and pulled out a thick legal document. The letterhead belonged to one of Los Angeles' most prestigious law firms. As she read the first page, her vision blurred with shock. What is this? David demanded, his voice rising. Elena's smile was sharp as winter. It's a deed transfer, David. This house, the Pasadena estate, and approximately 60% of what you consider your personal wealth now belongs to your wife. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison's face had gone white, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. David stared at his mother as if she had spoken in a foreign language. That's impossible, he whispered. Is it? Did you really think I would let you destroy 4 generations of Richmond family honor for the sake of your midlife crisis? Elena stood, her presence filling the room. You want to talk about fresh perspectives, Miss Wells? Here's one. You've attached yourself to a man who just lost everything. The reckoning had arrived 3 courses early. The sound that escaped David's throat was somewhere between a laugh and a scream. Mother, you can't be serious. This is my house, my company, my life. Elena remained standing, her posture regal and unmovable. Your company, yes, for now. Your house, no longer. Your life, that depends entirely on the choices you make in the next few minutes. Madison finally found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. I don't understand what's happening. What's happening, Miss Wells, is that you've made the classic mistake of confusing a wealthy man with a powerful one. Elena's gaze could have cut glass. David has been living off family money for years, using Richmond family assets as collateral for his business ventures. Assets that I control through irrevocable trusts established long before his birth. Sarah stared at the deed in her hands, still struggling to process the magnitude of what was happening. The house, the real estate portfolio, the investment accounts, all of it was now in her name. David shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the hardwood floor. You can't do this. I'm your son. You are my son, which is why this breaks my heart. Elena's voice carried genuine sadness beneath the steel. But I will not allow you to destroy what your grandfather built because you've confused lust with love. This is about Madison, isn't it? You've never given her a chance. Elena laughed, a sound devoid of humor. David, this has nothing to do with Miss Wells specifically. This has to do with your character. You brought your pregnant wife to dinner with your mistress. You planned to humiliate the mother of your child in her own home. What kind of man does that? Madison was crying now, her perfect makeup running in black streams down her cheeks. David, tell them this is all a mistake. Tell them about our plans. Plans. Sarah spoke for the first time since Elena's revelation, her voice deadly quiet. What plans? David's face flushed red, caught between his mother's judgment and his mistress's expectations. Sarah, I was going to tell you. After the baby came, we could work out an arrangement. An arrangement! Sarah repeated the words as if they tasted bitter. Like a business deal. It would have been better for everyone. Clean, civilized. You could keep the baby. I'd make sure you were comfortable financially. The casual cruelty of reducing their marriage and child to a financial transaction was staggering. Sarah felt something break inside her chest, but it wasn't her heart. It was the last chain binding her to the man she had once loved. "Comfortable," she said, standing slowly. Her hand braced against the table. "You were going to make me comfortable while you played house with your Instagram princess." Madison flinched at the description, but Sarah wasn't finished. "Did you discuss custody arrangements too? Visitation schedules? Or was I supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps of my own daughter's life you decided to throw me?" "Sarah, please, you're being emotional." "Emotional." Sarah's voice rose, months of suppressed rage finally finding an outlet. "My husband is planning to divorce me for a woman young enough to be his intern, and I'm being emotional." She turned to Madison, who was still crying into her napkin. "And you? Did you really think this was going to end well? Did you imagine he'd be faithful to you when he was willing to betray the mother of his child?" Madison's sobs grew louder, but Sarah felt no sympathy. This woman had knowingly destroyed a family, participated in the systematic humiliation of a pregnant woman, and now she was crying because her gold-digging scheme had backfired. Elena walked around the table and placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Sit down, dear. You shouldn't be standing so long in your condition." As Sarah sank back into her chair, Elena addressed David with the tone she might use for a disappointing court case. "You have a choice to make, David. You can accept this new reality with grace, commit to therapy, and try to rebuild some semblance of honor. Or you can fight this legally and lose everything, including your relationship with your daughter and any remaining respect from this family." David looked around the room at his mother's implacable expression, at his pregnant wife's tears of rage and relief, at his mistress's complete breakdown, and seemed to finally understand the magnitude of his situation. "I need a lawyer," he said weakly. "You'll need several," Elena replied. "I'd recommend starting with a criminal attorney." "Criminal? Using corporate funds to support your affair constitutes embezzlement. David, my investigators have documented approximately $200,000 in company money spent on Miss Wells over the past 6 months. Hotel rooms, jewelry, travel expenses." Madison's head snapped up, her tears stopping abruptly. "200,000, David. You told me those were business expenses." The final betrayal was complete. David had lied to everyone: his wife, his mistress, his business partners, even himself. Elena's smile was thin but satisfied. "Miss Wells, I'd suggest you retain counsel as well. Conspiracy charges can be quite serious." As Madison stumbled toward the door, her designer heels clicking frantically against the floor, David made one last desperate play. "Mother, please, we can fix this. I made mistakes, but we're family." Elena's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the mother beneath the judge. "David, you are my son, and I love you. But love doesn't mean enabling destruction. When you're ready to be the man your daughter deserves as a father, we can discuss your role in this family. Until then, I suggest you learn to live with the consequences of your choices." David looked at Sarah one final time, perhaps hoping for mercy or forgiveness. Instead, he found a woman he no longer recognized someone stronger than the person he had systematically undermined and betrayed. "Goodbye, David," Sarah said quietly. "I hope you find whatever it was you were looking for." As the front door slammed behind them, Sarah and Elena sat in the sudden silence of the empty dining room. The untouched dessert course remained on the table, a sweet ending to the most bitter meal of Sarah's life. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. Elena poured herself another glass of wine, her composure never wavering. "Now, my dear, you learn to be free." The next 72 hours passed in a blur of legal meetings, phone calls, and the strange sensation of walking through someone else's life. Sarah moved through the mansion that was now legally hers, touching familiar objects that suddenly felt foreign: the baccarat crystal David had bought for their anniversary, the original Picasso sketch his father had left him, the Italian leather furniture chosen during their honeymoon in Tuscany. Everything was the same, yet everything had changed. Ashley arrived Monday morning with a team of lawyers, their briefcases and serious expressions transforming the living room into a war room. Papers spread across the coffee table like battle plans, custody agreements, restraining orders, corporate liability assessments. "Sarah, you need to understand the scope of what Elena has done," Ashley said, reviewing the deed transfer documents. "This isn't just about the house. You now control approximately $40 million in real estate and investment assets." The number was meaningless to Sarah. She had gone from wealthy to wealthy with better lawyers. But what mattered was the power dynamic. David could no longer threaten her with financial abandonment. What about his company? Richmond Tech remains his, but Elena's move was strategic. The family trust provided the initial capital and ongoing credit lines. Without that backing, David's company becomes significantly more vulnerable. Jake Torres arrived that afternoon, his expression grim as he delivered news from the corporate side. The board called an emergency meeting this morning. Word of David's personal situation has leaked, and several major investors are asking questions about company finances. Sarah poured tea in the kitchen while Jake outlined the business implications. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough. Using corporate funds for personal expenses is a serious violation of fiduciary duty. The SEC will likely launch an investigation, even if David avoids criminal charges. His reputation as a CEO is finished." The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. David had risked everything for an affair that was now destroying the very empire he thought made him untouchable. "Jake, why did you help me?" "You and David built that company together." Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the ocean. "Because some things matter more than business partnerships. What he did to you was unforgivable. What he did to your daughter's future was unforgivable." That evening, Sarah sat in the nursery she had decorated months earlier, running her hands over the crib David had assembled with such enthusiasm during the early days of her pregnancy. The room was painted a soft yellow, gender-neutral, and filled with hope for their shared future. Now it felt like a shrine to naivety. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was short and devastating. "This isn't over. You'll regret this." Sarah forwarded the message to her legal team and blocked the number, but the threat lingered in her mind. David was angry, humiliated, and now dangerous. A man who felt he had nothing left to lose was capable of anything. Elena called that night with updates from her own intelligence network. "David is staying at the Four Seasons downtown. He's been calling family friends, trying to drum up support for challenging the trust transfers. So far, no one wants to get involved. And Madison, Miss Wells has retained counsel and is reportedly considering a tell-all interview with one of the entertainment news programs. Her publicist is positioning her as the victim of David's deception." Sarah almost laughed at the audacity. Madison, who had knowingly participated in destroying a marriage, was now claiming victim status. Can she cause problems? Legal problems? No. Public relations problems? Possibly. But Elena Richmond doesn't back down from fights, especially when her granddaughter's future is at stake. Wednesday morning brought the first contraction. Sarah was reading financial documents in bed when the pain hit. Sharp and unmistakable. She had been through false alarms before, but this felt different, urgent, demanding immediate attention. The drive to Cedars-Sinai took 20 minutes through Los Angeles traffic, with Elena behind the wheel and Ashley calling ahead to the medical team. Sarah breathed through the contractions, focusing on the one clear thought emerging from the chaos of the past week. Her daughter was coming into a different world than the one Sarah had planned. Not the perfect nuclear family Sarah had envisioned, but perhaps something better, a world where women protected each other, where strength mattered more than sentiment, where love was proven through actions rather than promises. Dr. Martinez met them at the emergency entrance, her calm professionalism immediately reassuring. "Sarah, how are you feeling?" "Like I'm ready to meet my daughter." Labor progressed quickly, as if her body was eager to finish what her life had started. Elena stayed by her side, holding her hand through the worst contractions and whispering encouragement that carried the weight of generations. "You're stronger than you know, Sarah. Stronger than David ever deserved." 8 hours later, Elena Rose Richmond entered the world at 6 pounds, 12 ounces, perfect fingers, perfect toes, and her father's dark hair paired with her mother's determined chin. As the nurse placed Elena in Sarah's arms, the magnitude of the past week crystallized into perfect clarity. This child would never wonder if she was wanted. She would never question her worth or accept treatment that diminished her dignity. She would grow up knowing that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept the unacceptable. "Hello, Elena," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome to your kingdom." Elena Richmond the elder stood at the foot of the hospital bed, watching her namesake with an expression of pure joy. "She's beautiful, Sarah. Absolutely beautiful. She is, isn't she?" As if summoned by destiny. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from David. "Heard about the baby. We need to talk." Sarah looked at the message, then at her daughter, then at the woman who had given her the strength to fight for both their futures. "Elena," she said to her mother-in-law, "would you like to hold your granddaughter?" As Elena cradled the baby with expert grandmother hands, Sarah deleted David's message without responding. Some conversations could wait. Some battles were already won, and some women were born to be queens. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the redesigned nursery, watching Elena sleep in the afternoon sunlight streaming through windows that now felt like her own. The past months had been a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and the exhausting joy of new motherhood. David's attempts to challenge the trust transfers had failed spectacularly. His lawyers discovered what Elena had known all along. The documents were ironclad, drafted by the best legal minds in California and reviewed by federal judges who owed Elena favors from her decades on the bench. Richmond Tech's IPO had cratered under SEC investigation, with David ultimately resigning as CEO to avoid criminal prosecution. The golden boy of Silicon Valley had become a cautionary tale about hubris and betrayal, his face appearing on business magazine covers with headlines like "The Fall of a Tech Titan" and "When Success Corrupts." Madison Wells had indeed given her tell-all interview, painting herself as an innocent victim seduced by a powerful older man. The public response was less sympathetic than she had hoped. Social media users dissected her Instagram posts with forensic precision, finding evidence of her calculated pursuit of wealthy men stretching back years. Her follower count plummeted, brand partnerships evaporated, and the lifestyle book deal was quietly canceled. But Sarah found that she cared less about their downfall than she had expected. Revenge, it turned out, was less satisfying than simply being free. "She's growing so fast," Elena said, entering the nursery with a cup of tea. The older woman had become a constant presence in their lives, her relationship with Sarah evolving from dutiful politeness to genuine affection. She smiled at me this morning. A real smile, not just gas. Elena laughed. Settling into the rocking chair, Sarah had moved from her own childhood bedroom. The Richmond women have always been early smilers. We know the power of charm. It was true. Little Elena was already showing signs of her grandmother's magnetic personality, capturing the attention of everyone from the pediatrician to the grocery store cashier with her bright eyes and ready grin. "I got a call from Jake today," Sarah said, adjusting the baby's blanket. "The board wants to offer me a consulting position with the new leadership team." "Are you interested?" Sarah considered the question. Richmond Tech represented her old life, the world she had inhabited as David's wife rather than her own person. But it also represented opportunity, a chance to rebuild something broken into something better. Maybe, not full-time, obviously, but Elena deserves to inherit something more than just real estate and investment accounts. She deserves a legacy she can be proud of. Elena Richmond smiled with approval. "My granddaughter is fortunate to have such a forward-thinking mother." The doorbell interrupted their conversation, followed by Ashley's voice calling from downstairs. Sarah's sister had extended her stay indefinitely, claiming she needed a vacation from San Francisco's legal pressure cooker, but really wanting to help navigate Sarah's new reality. "Sarah, you have visitors. Downstairs." Sarah found an unexpected delegation in her living room. 5 women in professional attire, ranging in age from their 30s to their 60s, all with the unmistakable bearing of wealth and influence. "Mrs. Richmond," the eldest said, extending her hand. "I'm Catherine Morrison. I believe you know my story." Sarah's breath caught. Catherine Morrison's divorce from her tech billionaire husband 3 years earlier had been front-page news, a brutal battle that exposed financial fraud and resulted in criminal charges. Catherine had emerged victorious but scarred, becoming an advocate for women facing similar situations. "These are my colleagues," Catherine continued, gesturing to the other women. "We represent something of an informal network, women who have faced what you've faced, who understand the unique challenges of divorcing powerful men." Ashley appeared with coffee service, clearly having coordinated this meeting without Sarah's knowledge. "We're not here to recruit you for anything," another woman said. Her name was Jennifer Santos, and Sarah recognized her from business magazines as the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company. "We're here to offer support and share resources." Over the next hour, Sarah listened to stories that felt like variations of her own. Wealthy, powerful men who used financial control as a weapon, women who had been underestimated, dismissed, and ultimately victorious through intelligence and determination. "The most important thing we learned," Catherine said, "is that surviving is just the beginning. The real victory is what you build afterward." As the women shared contact information and promised ongoing support, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months: excitement about the future. That evening, as she fed Elena her bedtime bottle, Sarah's phone rang. David's name appeared on the caller ID for the first time since the hospital. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Hello, David." "Sarah." His voice was different, smaller, stripped of its former arrogance. "How is she? How is Elena?" "She's perfect, growing stronger every day." "Can I see her? I know I have no right to ask, but she's my daughter too." Sarah looked down at Elena's trusting face, her tiny hand wrapped around Sarah's finger with surprising strength. "David, you can see her, but it will be on my terms, in my house, with supervision, and you'll need to complete therapy and anger management first. I've already started both programs." The admission surprised her. Perhaps losing everything had finally motivated real change. "We'll see. Call my attorney next week to arrange supervised visitation." "Sarah, I want you to know I'm sorry for everything." I destroyed the best thing in my life because I thought I deserved more than I had. You're right. You did destroy the best thing in your life. But David, I wasn't your best thing. She is. Sarah looked down at their daughter, and she deserves better from both of us. After hanging up, Sarah carried Elena to the window overlooking the Pacific. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink that no Instagram filter could improve. What do you think, little one? Should we give Daddy a chance to earn his way back into our lives? Elena gurgled and smiled, her tiny face radiating the kind of pure joy that comes from being completely loved and completely safe. Sarah smiled back. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever battles still needed fighting, she was ready. The scared, dependent woman who had once begged for scraps of her husband's attention was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and absolutely uncompromising when it came to protecting the future. The Richmond women, it seemed, were just getting started. 1 year later, Sarah stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Malibu mansion, holding Elena as they watched the sunset paint the Pacific in brilliant shades of gold and crimson. The house felt different now, not like a museum she was allowed to inhabit, but like a home she had claimed and transformed through her own choices. The nursery had been redesigned with Elena's input, her grandmother insisting that even babies had opinions about their environment. The formal dining room where David had orchestrated his spectacular downfall had been converted into a bright playroom filled with books, toys, and the laughter of frequent visitors. Ashley had moved to Los Angeles permanently, opening a family law practice that specialized in representing women in high-asset divorces. Her client base grew through word of mouth as Catherine Morrison's network proved both loyal and generous with referrals. "She's getting heavy," Elena Richmond observed, joining Sarah at the window. At 63, she moved with the same decisive energy that had defined her judicial career, but her expression had softened considerably since becoming a grandmother. "She's perfect," Sarah replied, adjusting Elena's weight against her hip. At 14 months, their daughter was walking, talking in simple sentences, and displaying an alarming aptitude for charming everyone she met. Just like her mother. The relationship between Sarah and her mother-in-law had evolved into something neither had expected: genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Elena had proven to be a wise mentor, teaching Sarah not just how to manage wealth, but how to wield it responsibly. "The foundation meeting went well today," Elena said, settling into her favorite chair near the window. "The board approved your proposal for the scholarship program." Sarah smiled with satisfaction. The Elena Rose Richmond Foundation for Educational Excellence would provide full college scholarships for first-generation students pursuing degrees in business and technology. It was a way of ensuring that opportunity wasn't limited to those born into privilege. Any word from David's lawyers about the custody modification? His supervised visitation will continue for another 6 months. The therapist's report was mixed progress in some areas, concerning patterns in others. David's journey toward redemption had been slower and more complicated than anyone had hoped. Losing his empire had been devastating to his sense of identity, but it had also forced him to confront the narcissistic tendencies that had destroyed his marriage. Some days he seemed genuinely committed to change. Other days, Sarah glimpsed the old arrogance lurking beneath his reformed exterior. "Mama, book," Elena announced, pointing toward her favorite reading corner with the imperious tone of someone accustomed to having her requests fulfilled immediately. "Reading time it is," Sarah said, settling into the oversized chair they had designated as the story throne. As Elena climbed onto her lap, Sarah reflected on how dramatically their lives had changed. The scared, dependent woman who had once tolerated emotional abuse rather than risk financial uncertainty was gone. replaced by someone who had learned to trust her own judgment and fight for what mattered. The doorbell chimed, its sound no longer triggering anxiety as it had during the dark months of David's betrayal. Now it usually announced friends, colleagues, or deliveries for Elena's rapidly expanding wardrobe. Ashley's voice carried from the entryway. "Sarah Jake's here for the meeting." Jake Torres had become a regular presence in their lives, his friendship with Sarah deepening after his role in exposing David's misconduct. His new venture capital firm specialized in investing in women-led startups, using connections from Elena's network to identify promising opportunities. The quarterly review, Sarah remembered. I lost track of time. Over the past year, Sarah had gradually assumed a more active role in managing the Richmond family investments. What had started as necessity, someone needed to oversee the assets Elena had transferred, had evolved into genuine interest and aptitude for financial strategy. "Elena, would you like to sit in on a business meeting?" Sarah asked her daughter. "You might learn something useful." "Business." Elena clapped her hands enthusiastically, though she probably associated the word more with snacks than spreadsheets. In the dining room that had been converted to a conference space, Jake spread out portfolios and financial reports. Ashley joined them, her legal expertise crucial for understanding regulatory implications of various investment strategies. "The tech portfolio is performing above projections," Jake said, highlighting several companies on his tablet. "But I think we should consider diversifying into sustainable energy and biotechnology." "What about the real estate holdings?" Sarah asked, reviewing profit and loss statements with the fluency she had developed over months of intensive study. "Strong performance across all markets. The commercial properties in downtown Los Angeles are particularly valuable given the urban development trends." Elena Richmond entered the room carrying a tea service, her movements graceful despite her age. "How are our newest investments performing?" "The women-led startups are exceeding expectations," Ashley reported, "particularly the educational technology company we funded last quarter." As they discussed portfolio allocation and investment strategies, Sarah marveled at how natural this felt. A year ago, she had been a wife who signed documents without reading them, trusting her husband to manage their financial future. Now she was making decisions that affected dozens of employees and thousands of students who would benefit from scholarship programs. Little Elena had fallen asleep in her lap, worn out by the excitement of a business meeting. Sarah smoothed her daughter's dark hair, thinking about the world she was building for her to inherit. "I have a proposal," Sarah said, setting down her coffee cup. "I want to establish a venture capital fund specifically focused on supporting women leaving abusive relationships. Not just financial support, but business mentorship, legal resources, career development." The room fell silent as the others absorbed the scope of what she was suggesting. "Sarah, that's ambitious," Jake said carefully. "The legal complexity alone would be enormous." "So was divorcing a billionaire," Sarah replied, "but we managed that successfully." Elena Richmond's smile was proud and sharp. "What kind of initial funding are you considering?" $50 million to start. We can grow it as we prove the concept." Ashley whistled softly. "You're talking about creating an entire support ecosystem." "Exactly. Catherine Morrison's network has shown me how many brilliant women are trapped in situations similar to what I faced. They have ideas, talents, and determination, but they lack resources and connections." Elena Richmond leaned forward, her expression intrigued. "What would you call this fund?" Sarah looked down at her sleeping daughter, thinking about the courage required to build something from nothing, to transform pain into purpose. "The Phoenix Fund, because sometimes the most beautiful things rise from ashes." Jake began taking notes, already calculating operational requirements and regulatory frameworks. Ashley was mentally drafting legal structures. Elena Richmond was nodding with the satisfaction of someone whose mentorship had produced exactly the result she had hoped for. As the meeting continued and plans took shape, Sarah felt the same sense of purpose that had sustained her through the darkest months of her marriage's collapse. She was no longer just surviving David's betrayal, she was transforming it into something that would help other women not just survive, but thrive. The Pacific sunset painted the room in shades of gold and promise as four friends planned a revolution, while the next generation of Richmond women slept peacefully in her mother's arms, dreaming of a world where strength was inherited and courage was cultivated. Sometimes the greatest revenge was simply refusing to let betrayal define your future. Sometimes the best victory was building something so beautiful that your enemies became irrelevant. And sometimes, a woman scorned became a woman empowered, creating legacy that would outlast any man's empire. The crown, it turned out, had been Sarah's all along. She had just needed to learn she was worthy of wearing it.